it's Clay. Welcome to another League of Legends video. This time I want to talk about AD carry itemization and specifically have a little bit of a discussion on defensive items. So generally, the AD carry build path is pretty set in stone. The best, I guess, build right now is probably going to look like, a Bloodthirster into Static Shiv into Last Whisper, finished up with an Infinity Edge. You can swap in Phantom Dancer for Shiv or Blade of the Rune King for Bloodthirster. Maybe do Infinity Edge first, but these four items are probably the top tier in terms of AD carry itemization, with their proper substitution. So that gives you 5 items in your core build, and that leaves you for one defensive choice. Now, let's talk about this. So I'm going to present 4 options to kind of think about. We can get rid of that. But I'm going to present 4 options, and really we can kind of discuss each one, their strengths and weaknesses, when you should buy them, when you should not, and just kind of understand kind of what you're looking for in a late game AD carry defensive choice. So the first thing that you need to realize is that there are some games when a defensive item is actually not necessary. And then in those types of games, what I would probably do is get a second lifesteal item. So maybe another Bloodthirster or another Blade of the Ruin King, or whichever one of the 2 you didn't buy. So your build would look something like this. Like a full 6-item AD carry build with these items would be pretty insane. But that only would happen in games where you feel really safe, where you have a lot of peel, and or their team doesn't have a lot of dive. And also in games where you feel like you really need to be pumping out a lot of damage. So if you need to be the late game hard carry, consider not taking a defensive item if you feel safe, if they don't have any assassins running around, if they don't really have any way to get to you unless you make a big mistake and you feel confident in your positioning. But, that doesn't happen very often. There are a lot of assassins running around. There are a lot of champions that dive to the backline and are looking to kill AD carries. So the first defensive item I'll talk about is Guardian Angel. Everybody, has seen this. This is probably the most typical defensive choice, but let's talk about it. So number 1, it gives a mix of armor and magic resist, which is really nice. So it's a very good kind of jack of all trades defensive item because it helps against both types of damage. It doesn't help against true damage, however, but it does give you armor and magic resist, which is nice. Now, secondly, the big reason why you buy this is for the passive that when you die, you can revive yourself. Now, this makes this item either kind of binary because you're paying $27.50, so it's a lot of gold, and the armor and magic resist values on their own definitely do not add up to $2,750 worth of gold. So it's extremely gold inefficient if the passive is on cooldown. But when you do have this passive up, it's really powerful. And specifically, the best time to buy GA is against assassins, because a lot of times assassins depend on getting in there, bursting a target down, and then getting out. However, if you put somebody through their GA stasis, they really haven't done their job, and then they just kind of are left in a weird place. There are a lot of assassins that have a reset mechanic, like Katarina or Kha'Zix, Master Yi. Those, even like Jinx if the enemy team has a Jinx. These reset mechanics are oftentimes really important. And so preventing that with a GA can be really powerful. And also, when you usually come out of stasis, the team fight is in such a place where it's about ready for somebody to clean up, and AD carries are really, really good at cleanup, just because they have so much damage that they're oftentimes hard to deal with in terms of cleanup. Now, the biggest thing about this, though, is if you're playing against a team composition that's going to try and pick you off, Guardian Angel is generally pretty useless, because the worst thing that could happen when you buy a GA is that you face check or you get caught out of position or something. Maybe they have a Blitzcrank who hooks you in, and then suddenly you're sitting in stasis and the 5 members of the enemy team are circling around you like hawks, ready to take you out, and your team can't do anything to really save you. So that's the only time when it's not good to buy a GA, when they have a lot of displacement to pick you off and get you away from your safety. But for the most part, Guardian Angel is probably the best choice. Now, another option that you'll see a lot in the LCS, and probably one that we should see more of in solo queue, is Banshees Veil. I'm going to give an argument that this is just as good as GA, if not better. So for one, it gives you health and magic resist. Those are probably the best stats to have because a lot of the big burst champions are probably AP based, like a lot of burst mages are going to be AP based, unless it's an AD assassin. But generally, you're going to be taking burst from a mage. So the magic resist is really nice and also gives you health. Health, again, is a defensive statistic that works against all types of opponents. So just a really good item on its own. It's also fairly cost efficient on its own without its passives, so that gives it a leg up on, the Guardian Angel, that it gives you health instead of armor and magic resist. It gives you health and magic resist. Now, the passive component is quite different. So the main thing about this is that every 25 seconds you get a spell shield. Now, a spell shield is really, really powerful in the late game because basically, the enemy team, they've got 5 champions with 4 abilities. So 20 abilities, and one of those is going to be totally nullified by each Banshees Veil, and that's a pretty big deal, especially, against, like I said, burst champions. Banshees Veil pretty much shuts them down. If you think about, like, a champion like LeBlanc, who's pretty scary right now, Banshees Veil is, like, a hard counter to her because it's going to eat one of her spells, and she's only got, 4 spells to throw at you, so if you eat one of them, you're cutting out about a quarter of her damage, which is a pretty big deal. So Banshees Veil overall is just really, really strong. And also, a lot of times, the first spell that initiates a fight is some sort of crowd control. And so if your Banshees Veil shield is up, it means that the opponent has to find some way to break your shield without using a crowd control ability, because they're going to want to save the CC to use it on you once your Banshees Veil is popped. So you're kind of force your opponents to do suboptimal things, and a lot of times it can save your life. So the spell shield is really powerful, and also 25-second cooldown compared to a 5-minute cooldown is really, really good. You're going to use this a lot more frequently. You might even get 2 spell shields up within one team fight. So overall, I think Banshees Veil really has a strong argument to be made, and something you should be considering perhaps over a Guardian Angel in certain situations. A little bit more versatile, a little bit more well-rounded, not quite as binary as Guardian Angel. Just a solid choice overall. Next up is Randuins. Randuins is probably the go-to choice when you're playing against a full AD team. If they've got an AD mid, like an AD assassin, and an AD top, and an AD jungler, or maybe even like, let's say their top laner is something like Dr. Mundo. He does magic damage, but the brunt of their damage is physical, especially if they have an AD mid. If you'll see something like Zed or maybe Yasuo in the mid lane, Randuins is a really good choice because it's the best defensive option against physical damage. It gives you health, it gives you armor, and also the passive is really nice because it's the basic attacks and movement speed will be slowed anytime somebody's attacking you. So it makes you harder to chase down. It makes it a little easier for you to kite bruisers who are chasing you, and it also gives you an active which can slow nearby units as well, again enabling you to kite your opponents. And overall, 500 health and 70 armor. It's just a really beefy bunch of defensive statistics, and it just makes Randuins a really strong choice against a lot of AD threats. So, I think Banshees and Randuins are kind of more team dependent. Banshees is really good against a couple of like if they have a double AP threat, maybe an Elise and in the jungle or something like that, as well as a standard AP mage in the mid lane. Then Banshees Veil becomes really attractive. But however, if they have a 80 mid and maybe an 80 jungle or an 80 top, then Randuins is all of a sudden really attractive, and just a really strong all-around defensive choice. Gives you a lot of cutting potential and safety against physical damage champions. Now the last one I want to mention is Frozen Mallet. I'm a little bit low on Frozen Mallet. I think Frozen Mallet is a little bit deceptively weak. Like, you think it would be strong, but it's actually not. So the kicker, a couple things here is, first of all, it's the most expensive of these items. It's 600 gold more than GA and Banshees Veil, which I've already raved about as being really fantastic defensive choices. But Frozen Mallet is 300 gold more, so it's even more expensive. It might even be like another team fight or another back before you are able to buy it. And, so that's like a whole team fight more that you're going to not have your completed defensive option. And as well is it only gives you health. There are no resistances. If you'll notice, all of these items have resistances, and that's because resistances are just better than health. The perfect defensive, choices is a mixture of health and resistances, which is what makes these two so good. But with Frozen Mallet, you're just getting health, and health really isn't that good as a defensive statistic. Sure, health is nice because it works against both armor and magic resist, but it just doesn't provide the same level of defensive safety as the other choices. And I think the main reason why people would buy Frozen Mallet is for its passive. It is, gives you a nice slow every time you auto attack, which seems really strong. I mean, heck, I would love to have a slow on every auto attack, but if you look at Ashe has that built into her kit, and she's generally not considered a very safe or a very very valuable, coveted AD carry. She tends to be a little bit risky because she doesn't have any escapes. And the reason for this is because slows are not actually that strong at keeping you safe. Slows are very prevalent throughout the game. There are a lot of items that provide slows. There are a lot of items, that are very, Randuins, Blade of the Ruin King, Rylai's. There are a lot of ways that people can get slows. But the thing about slows is that slows don't do anything to stop people from gap closing onto you, and that's really the problem when you're an AD carry, is that somebody's going to use their gap closer, they're going to jump onto you, and then deal a bunch of damage, and a slow doesn't do anything. Let's say they have an enemy assassin, like a Zed, a Blah, or a LeBlanc. If you're slowing them, it really doesn't matter, because they've already jumped on top of you, and they're going to burst all their damage in 2 seconds, and having the Frozen Mallet is not going to do anything to keep you alive in that situation. Really, the only time Frozen Mallet is good is when they have champions that are weak to kiting, or if you struggle with kiting, that Frozen Mallet can kind of help you with that. So, examples of this would be pretty much any champion that just has to run at you. So, like a Udyr is the classic example, or maybe Garen, or Olaf. Again, champions that don't have gap closers, that need to run at you to be effective. If the enemy team is going for a very move speed based team composition, something like with Sivir or Karma, or if they've got a talisman and you need to slow them down, then maybe this could be valuable. But all in all, I think that having an on demand slow is generally not that great, especially compared to these other options. Especially if you look at Randuins, I would almost always prefer Randuins to Frozen Mallet, because number one, you're getting a lot more defense. It's 200 less health, but it's 70 armor. 70 armor is fantastic. I think that the general way of understanding armor and magic resist is that if you get 100 armor, you are taking 50% less physical damage. So basically, you're cutting every time you get to 100, you take half. So if you get to 200, you're taking a quarter. I think that's correct. And if you know better, please feel free to correct me in the comment section. But so you're almost at 100 armor, with your base armor. You're cutting all physical damage in half. Whereas 700 health, I don't know, people are going to slice through that pretty quickly. So overall, looking at these choices, Guardian Angel's, definitely best against assassins. Banshees Veil is best against champions that have really prioritized spells. Very high impact spells that you need to be careful about, or just some scary mages or magic damage threats on the enemy team. Randuins is best against an all physical damage team, and then Frozen Mallet is a very situational pick when you need to be able to kite. So overall, those are the kind of go-to defensive choices. I hope you guys learned something. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comment section. I'll try to answer them as best as I can. But that's my stance on AD carry defensive options, so to help improve your game. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll see you soon. Bye.